Well, would you feast your eyes on this? 1998 Triumph Daytona T595. It's powered by a 955cc triple, making 130 horsepower at the flywheel at 10,500 RPM. Tons of mid-range on this bike. And this bike is a bit of a relic. It's a throwback to a time where 900cc motorcycles pretty well dominated the top of the food chain when we're talking about hypersports class motorcycles. Think in terms of the CBR 900, the 929, the 954, the ZX9, these legendary bikes from about 25 years ago. But we've got a couple of motorcycles that are coming for 2025 that could possibly be the resurgence of the 900cc sport bike. Could they be a successor to motorcycles like this? Well, maybe. Let's chat about it. And I'll tell you what, guys, these modern 900cc sport bikes are going to have some pretty big shoes to fill with the list that I just got through giving you. But, well, let's talk about them, and then we can kind of decide if they really would be a at least spiritual successor to motorcycles like this. The first one I want to talk about is the KTM RCR 990. It's powered by the 990cc parallel twin RC8 engine, making about 123 horsepower. It's proving that this bike should, when it's released, be very light, and it's really set up more for somebody that likes to hit the twisties, not really put together for outright maximum horsepower. At least that's what KTM has to say. Okay, the second bike is the much anticipated Yamaha R9. This motorcycle is, well, at least slated to take over the slot where the R6 held, and it's putting down 117 horsepower out of a 900cc CP3 engine. That CP3 engine is loved by everybody that's ridden a motorcycle powered by it. The MT09 or the XSR 900, for every review that I have seen of that motorcycle, not one has been negative. So we've got two motorcycles, one making just shy of 120, the other one just shy of 125. Presumably in a lighter weight package than what you would find with this bike, but certainly not necessarily lighter than the CBR 900s that I was mentioning earlier or the ZX9. The real issue I think that a lot of folks have had with 900cc motorcycles has been that, well, it's been relegated to more of a middleweight status than a heavyweight hitter the way that it was back in the day. 900cc mills have been characterized lately by lower compression, less aggressive camshafts, and they've been placed in frames that are really more suited for retro motorcycles, kind of like the Z900 RS or the Z900. They're really not outright performance motorcycles. And just like the engines that I just got through mentioning, that 123 horsepower RC8 or the 117 horsepower CP3, it doesn't echo maximum performance, really, does it? It really sounds more like engines that are geared more for mid-range. So more of that. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you would have to consider them middleweights and then judge them accordingly. Because trying to judge these types of motorcycles, even though their displacement may give an impression that it's going to be extremely powerful, they're not going to be as extreme with the power of their delivery that you might be expecting. And there's very few motorcycles in the class of 900-ish cc that make much more power than that. The V2 Panigale being really the only one that comes to mind initially, and that's 155 horsepower. But there is one motorcycle that they will be judged against. Now let's all say it together at the same time. GSXR 750. See, as good as the RCR is going to be, and as fantastic and as punchy and as fun as the R9 will be, it will, at least so far on paper, not be able to keep pace with the current reigning champion of the middleweight class, the GSXR 750. That motorcycle comes to the table with about 145 horsepower. That is substantially more than the other two offerings. And for those that would argue that these other motorcycles are larger in displacement, they rev lower and will deliver torque sooner, I got news for you. The problem with that argument is that it doesn't take gearing into account. That GSXR 750 will easily rev another 3,000 or 4,000 RPM on top of what these other offerings are going to give to us, which is a huge percentage considering the other engines pretty well cap out just shy of 10,000 RPM. Another 30% in RPM or so means you can gear it substantially more aggressively, and that is where the difference really does lie. Now, I understand that you can say that any motorcycle can be modified or at least worked on to where they can be, well, performance enhanced. Well, the GSX-R 750 kind of comes performance enhanced from the factory, so going stock for stock, and even when tuned, I did a little research on this, that RC8990 and the CP3, they don't really pick up a ton of power once you start throwing tunes and exhaust and all of that to them. They're fairly well optimized from the factory. Nothing wrong with that. And you just got to remember that sometimes you can ruin something by comparison. So if you are thinking about picking up one of the RCRs or the R9 and assuming that they fit within that $13,000 price range that the Gixxer 750 falls into, just know that you're getting a phenomenal motorcycle. Both engines have been proven to be extremely responsive and again, offer up a very fun riding experience for folks that want to have those types of engines underneath. However, if outright performance is what you're looking for, well, we got to talk about a motorcycle that's been around since this guy has been around. And for well over 20 years, the GSX-R 750 kind of wins that argument every single time. But that's just my opinion. Post up your thoughts and we'll catch you on the next one. That's a wrap.